Is Saint Lucia getting a bad deal from Global Port Holdings, or is the public being swayed against it by misinformation? The opposition United Workers' Party claims that the Pierre administration sold out Saint Lucia's port. The government maintains that this is far from the truth, but it has yet to respond with the public release of the contract, which would reveal the truth about the agreement. How are ordinary Saint Lucians to make sense of this when there is perhaps more political smoke than concrete economic facts? In an exclusive interview with Choice News, economist Richard Peterkin discussed the merits, limitations, recommendations, and unanswered questions of the GPH agreement.
As I said, my position before is I do not like government running anything, and that includes airports, seaports, etc. You can have a PPP that gives government a lot of say, but not to actually operate, because there is a tendency, because of cronyism, for square pegs, round holes, people to be hired and not doing a proper job, etc. Who's getting the concession for this, etc. We've seen that in the past. Whereas if it's done completely on a private basis, but with still some control in terms of they're not free to do anything they want, that's always better than actually having government run it.
However, from his perspective, there was not sufficient consultation with the private sector in the negotiation and development of the agreement.
So the question is, when you look at the deal, you have to ask yourself, first of all, was there enough consultation? I gather from what I've heard that yes, there was some consultation, but I don't think it was as widespread as it was back in the days when Dr. Anthony was working on the Cianna deal. And so, but certainly some of the bodies like the Chamber, and I imagine other private sector bodies, did get a chance to discuss that with GPH and presumably asked all the right questions.
Peterkin concedes that the absorption of debt, capital expenses, and operating costs by GPH is an advantage.
Both capital and operating costs will now be borne to a large extent by GPH, which would therefore create a little more fiscal space for the government on an annual basis. The assumption here is that because GPH has done this with other countries, they are in a position to make our port user-friendly, more attractive, bring us more business. They will help negotiate with the cruise people, and more so than perhaps we might have been able to do.
He struggles to accept the rationale of community developments being done at Castries, Soufrière, and Vieux-Fort, mostly to improve the cruise passenger experience, whilst other critical port developments remain untouched. He nevertheless expects that the government had otherwise planned to address container overcrowding at Port Castries.
Yes, it relieves SLASPA $50 million of debt, which is a big amount, and SLASPA clearly needs help. You can see, look at all the containers that are blocked up there. I often wonder why did they not negotiate as part of the deal that GPH would assist in the building of a container park in cul-de-sac, which is what we really need. And there have been lots of things that have been given to SLASPA and the government to do that, which would remove the gridlock that the private sector has at the port now. But that's not part of the deal.
To him, the agreement may be falling short where it lacks performance clauses and periodic reviews regarding arrival volumes, local employment, vendor inclusion, community protections, mandatory annual reporting, and crucially, revenue sharing as it relates to the head tax.
Could they have not tied it into a revenue sharing rather than a fixed revenue, so that it starts off at whatever figure, and depending on the level of the revenue, would increase or decrease? GPH may not have agreed to that, but still, you would have thought that that could have been part of it, so that in fact we don't have to worry if in fact GPH is benefiting from a windfall.
Peterkin says that in the short term, the GPH deal seems beneficial. In the very long term, however, he's uncertain as to what the value of the deal will amount to. He calls for more transparency, specifically recommending the publication of the agreement to enable the public to come to their own determination of whether the deal is a net positive or not. For Choice News Now, I am Cianna Dalsan.